Welcome everyone to Risk. I'm here with James, and we have a special guest, Rudy, Alaska Prepper. Welcome to the channel.
Hello, how are you guys doing? Thank you for having me, by the way.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you, and thank you for coming on. So, before we started talking, we were talking about how cold it is up in Alaska and how you have to keep your cars plugged in to like a heater that keeps them warm so you could start up right away. And then that led into some discussion about electricity and fuel and everything. So what's going on up there, and what are you preparing for right now with that?
Well, being that I'm of a preparedness mindset, I like to prepare for whatever risks I see in the near or out in the future. And we were talking about fuel and how expensive it's going to be to heat our homes this winter. And here, probably about a month ago or so, I have my heating oil filled up on my tanks. I normally go through about 450, maybe 500 gallons of heating fuel or heating oil a year. So I had them topped off about a month ago. So here, about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, I hear what's going on in the UK with how much gas prices are going up, how much heating fuel prices are going up. So I talked to my wife, and I say, you know what? I think that by this time next year, heating fuel and fuel in general, be it gasoline, diesel, propane, LP, whatever it may be, natural gas, is going to be a lot more expensive than what it is this year for several reasons that we can get into. But the way that I like to prep is I don't care what the reason is. I always say, why does it matter why something happens for you to be prepared for it? Being prepared for it really doesn't matter why something's going to happen. So if fuel prices are going to go up because a refinery went down, does it really matter to the end user that fuel prices are going up because a refinery went down? No, it just matters to them that fuel prices are going up. So I don't often get into the knickknacks of why this, why that. All I look at is, can it happen? Is there a risk of it happening in my near future? And if there is, I try to take steps to mitigate what I think may happen. So I talked to my wife about how I think fuel prices are going to go up here in the near future and into next year. And I don't think they're really going to go down much, right? Because of the situation that we're in, obviously. So I went ahead and got a hold of enough fuel tanks that I can fill for an additional year of heating. That way, if this time next year, fuel prices are unavailable due to your socioeconomic status, or if they're unavailable, if fuel is unavailable because it's just too scarce, because right now, as we stand in the United States of America, there's only about a 31-day supply of heating oil, which is really not a lot when you think about it, especially when winters in the lower 48, winters are about 3 months long. Up here, they're about 7 months long, right? So knowing that we don't have a very large stockpile of fuel, knowing that I have enough fuel to get through this winter, but thinking that next year fuel prices are going to really go up in price, we decided to just go ahead and fill up those tanks that we have that are empty, to allow us to have some peace of mind going into next year, knowing, hey, if something happens next year, we have a buffer of an additional supply of fuel for next winter. So it's always about thinking ahead.
What kind of fuel do you use? You use heating oil or propane?
Yeah, heating oil. Heating oil, which is pretty much diesel. Heating oil is just diesel with a higher sulfur content, and it's a lot cleaner than the diesel that they put in like trucks and vehicles and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, that's one of the things, and to segue off of that, last year, probably around last December or so, I was looking at lumber prices and I'm like, man, lumber prices have gone up, but they look like they're going to go up a lot more. So again, I sat down and I said, what am I going to need in the form of lumber next year? As you can see here, we're in a different space here than we were last time we talked. Last time that we talked, we were in my living room, and this is what I like to call my bunker. which is pretty much just a glorified shed that I turned into my little studio. So I built that this year. So last year, I knew that I was going to build this. Last year, around December or so, I knew that I was going to need lumber for different things around the house. So what I did was last December, I went to our local Lowe's and I placed about a $6,000 order of lumber.
Wow.
I ordered every single thing that I was going to need for all of my projects for this year. And it sat on my driveway all through winter until I needed it. Well, come to find out, had I waited to purchase that lumber when I needed to start building this structure, it'd cost me twice as much as what I paid for it last December.
Yeah.
Same thing with the heating fuel. Yep, same thing with the heating fuel. I'm thinking that next year around this time, it's going to be a lot more expensive than it is now. I have the money now to do it. Why not do it? Even if it's going to sit there, it's not going to be making me interest, but in the long run, it could save me a lot of money. And even if it doesn't save me a lot of money, it's not going to go to waste. I know I'm going to use it.
Well,
So,
6 years ago, we were looking at over $4 a gallon for regular gasoline, down
Yeah.
here. I don't know how it was out there, but we're slowly encroaching on the same situation now. So I give you a lot of respect for taking action and looking forward and trying to hedge, which is what everybody should really contemplate doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always tell people, I say, I hate leaving money in the bank. I hate letting money sit in the bank and do what it's best at. And when I say money, understand that I mean fiat currency, all right? Sure. Because this here is money. Right? Silver and gold, that's money.
Exactly.
And really anything that has value, anything that has your wealth, anything that has your time stored in it. Because you see, this ounce of silver has about an hour's worth of my time stored in it. All right. So anything is wealth. A bicycle can be money as long as you find someone else that wants that bicycle bad enough to give you something that they have that you want. Right. So, but fiat currency, dollar bills or digits on a screen, that is just a representation of your time that can go away at any time. And the reason that I hate leaving it in the bank is because I like to say that leaving money in the bank is just allowing it to sit in the inferno of what is inflation, of what steals your wealth from the actual money that you've earned, because paper bills are money at one time. At one time, they are money. And that is when you actually put your labor into earning those paper bills. But and then you exchange them for something of value that equals that value of time that you put into it. But after that, it's nothing but paper. It's nothing but a promissory note that is really debt. I'm not sure if I'm running away with your show, Lee, but unfortunately, I go on a tangent when I talk about money because I think that money is so important.
We can see the excitement in your face as you're talking. So we see it's.
I mean, money, ladies and gentlemen. If you could take one thing away from this conversation, just one thing, I would like it to be this: is that when people look at money, they look at the number instead of what that number represents. When you look at a $20 bill, you look at that 20 instead of the labor that you had to give up in exchange for that $20 bill. And why is it important that you learn to look at money in the form of time and labor? Because if you understand that a $20 bill is representative of your time, then you would understand how destructive inflation is to your wealth. And I would like to take a minute to explain. At least this is the way that I see it, and it's the way that I would like for other people to see it. That way, every time that they heard the words stimulus, every time that they heard the words quantitative easing, every time that they heard the acronym MMT, modern monetary theory, every time that they heard Jerome Powell or Janet Yellen tell the American people, hey, inflation is a good thing. That they would understand that inflation is the very thing that steals from you your time. It steals from you your labor. And let me explain to you why. And I'm going to use one of my favorite cuts of meat to explain to you why. 2 years ago, I was making about $20 an hour. And 2 years ago, 1 pound of ribeye, which is my favorite cut of meat, was roughly $9 a pound. But let's call it 10 so that we can do easy math. So 2 years ago, I was making $20 an hour. 1 pound of ribeye was $10 a pound. That means that 2 years ago, it cost me 1/2 hour of my labor in order to afford to buy 1 pound of ribeye. Now let's go ahead and fast forward to the present time. If you all do a little research, you'll find out that in the last 2 years, our government / Federal Reserve, which I think are one and the same, all right? Our government / Federal Reserve has created about 30 to 35% of all of the money that has ever existed in the history of the United States of America. Think about that for a second. If you're over 40 years old, remember when you were in your teens or in your 20s that we thought that $1 million was a big thing, that somebody could retire on $1 million. And then fast forward to your 30s when $1 million is nothing and $1 billion was the next big thing. And then fast forward to today, where $1 billion is almost nothing anymore, where the US spends about $2 billion an hour. All right, we spend about $2 billion an hour just to cover our bare necessities as a nation. And now $1 trillion is the next big thing. Think about all that money that's in the system and consider that the more money that there is in a system chasing the same or lesser amount of goods, then the more that those goods are going to cost you in those paper notes. Now, if you take a look at the average wage in the United States today, it's about $30 an hour. It's about $10 more an hour than it was when I was earning $20 an hour back a few years back. So now, if I want to go and buy some ribeye, where it used to be $10 a pound 2 years ago, today it's $20 a pound if you can find it for $20 a pound. In some places it's more. But today where I live, ribeye is $20 a pound today. So whereas 2 years ago I could buy 1 pound of ribeye for a half hour of my labor, today for me to buy that 1 pound of ribeye, even though I'm making 50% more than I did 2 years ago, it cost me 40 minutes of my labor. Why is that, ladies and gentlemen? Because there is so much fake money in the system that was printed out of thin air, out of nothing, that money that was printed out of nothing had to gain its value from somewhere. Where did it gain its value from? From the dollars that you have saved, that you had already earned, and the dollars that you are currently earning today. Therefore, stealing your labor from you. And ladies and gentlemen, your labor, your time, is your freedom. So when you hear those words that I aforementioned, inflation, MMT, QE, stimulus, whenever you hear those words, substitute those words with, hey, I'm going to steal your labor from you. And you're going to be a debt slave for the rest of your life as long as this system that we are governed by now, this financial system is still in place. Now, I know that I beat that horse to death, but I would hope that at least one person can understand where it is that I'm coming from.
It's funny. I was thinking today, I heard news that the dollar stores are going to be like $5 stores going forward.
No more. They are no more.
I don't know if you remember Woolworth when you were a kid. Did you have a Woolworth store?
Yeah, that was a long time ago. Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
5 and dime stores, remember?
Yep, so 5 and dime stores.
We went from 5 and dime to dollar, and now we're probably going to be 5 and dime again, but it's got to be 5 and 10, but it'll be $5 and $10.
Well, it's this is, and you can actually look for this on Amazon. I put up a post a long time ago on my channel, And it was a picture of a bag of 100 plastic pennies that Amazon was selling. And they were selling it for $3.99. And on the post, I remember saying something, you know that your monetary system is in trouble when a bag of plastic pennies costs 4 times more than 100 real pennies.
It's like, why even buy them?
Incredible.
No sense at all.
I mean, the signs are everywhere. The signs that our monetary system is over is everywhere. And our monetary system really is over. It died, in my opinion, it died in 2008.
Yeah. No.
Because without the intervention of all of the free and easy money that the Federal Reserve was printing out of thin air, we would not have survived. So right now, our monetary system is what I like to say is like on life support. Right now, it's on life support, and there's somebody over there pumping the chest and squeezing that bag, getting oxygen in there. But as soon as that stops, it's over. So people that are ignorant as to what is going on, and when I say ignorant, I don't say it in a facetious way, because ignorance can either be self-induced, or it can just be that you were raised to be ignorant by a system that cares not about you. So people that are ignorant to the fact that this monetary system is gone, and they don't at least get themselves a couple of silver quarters or silver dollars or whatever, or food, put food away. Yeah. If you want to make a lot of interest in stocks, the best stock to invest in, ladies and gentlemen, is your well-stocked pantry.
No doubt about it.
If you have a well-stocked pantry, you have a lot of value in that pantry, because it's real stuff that you use on an everyday basis that's not going down in price anytime soon, nor will it in the future. Food prices are not going down, ladies and gentlemen. They're going to continue to go up. And you know why? Because nature says so, because mathematics says so, because physics says so. Doesn't matter how much some crazy person yells 1 and 1 equals 3, it will always equal 2. And you cannot fool nature. I tell people that nature always reverts to its mean. Nature is mathematics. Fibonacci, right? Look up Fibonacci. Fibonacci is a beautiful sequence that tells you what nature is about.
Have you read any Robert Proctor's stuff?
I don't think so.
You should read, yeah, he's an Elliott wave theorist. He runs a site. I mean, they don't have the best like trading advice record,
right?
His take on Fibonacci's play in nature and in society,
it's incredible.
Yeah, really, it's a mind-blowing thing.
I mean, when I haven't read any books on it, but I've read a lot of like articles and papers and stuff, and Fibonacci is just a beautiful thing. Yeah. I mean, with Fibonacci, they've discovered that even the Amazon is constructed according to a Fibonacci sequence. Even the trees, the way that they grow, it's nature. And my point is that nature will always revert to its mean. When you look at a stock chart per se, and you see all those squiggly lines, what you're looking at is nature.
I love the book I'm going to recommend to you. I'll send you an email.
Awesome. But what I was getting at with that stock market chart and why it's so important that you look at that is because you're looking at nature. And people will ask me, well, how's that nature? It's just lines on a chart. I'm like, well, those lines on our chart are representations of what people are actually doing.
Absolutely.
And then some people will say, well, a lot of that is computers. And I'm like, yes, you're right. But who programs the computers?
Absolutely.
I said, so eventually, when you look at a chart of any kind, eventually it will revert back to its means. Yep. And if you've seen the stock market chart for the last 40 years, it goes like this. So eventually that spot up there is going to come back down to where nature tells it should be. So you need to protect yourselves, not only with money, not only with gold, not only with silver, but with those things that you need on an everyday basis. Because what's going to happen is, Lee and James, I think, is that we in the United States and a lot of the world are going to revert back to a very, very low standard of living, because we have been living off of the future's teat for so long that bill is coming due. And we're going to have to revert back to living a lower standard of living so that we can pay that bill that we've borrowed from the future. And it's not going to be good for a lot of people. And that is why I have a channel that's called Alaska Prepper, because my mission with that platform is to introduce people to preparing, introduce them to how to do things, why they should prepare, how they should prepare, what they should prepare, and the things that they can do to protect themselves and their families from having to live with a lower standard of living than what they've been used to living in the past years.
Last time we spoke, you mentioned that you're expecting kind of, I guess, the mother of all crashes. I mean, is
Yeah.
So, and that's based on what you're saying about reverting to the mean.
Yeah, I expect for there to be, the mother of all crashes, and I'm talking like, like the Great Depression is going to be nothing compared to what's going to happen. And the reason is because when we look at that stock market chart, I'll come back to it. What we're looking at is energy. When you look at a $20 bill, I'll go back to the $20 bill, you're looking at energy, your energy. And every time that we create fiat currency out of thin air, what we are doing is we're doing a few things. We are stealing the energy out of the fiat currency notes that you already have, that's already in the system. That's one thing that we're doing, but we're also borrowing energy from the future. We're taking energy from the future and spending it now. Why is that? Because let's bring it down to a personal level. Let's say that I go and I purchase an $80,000 truck, which is incredible for me to say that you can actually go buy an $80,000 truck. But I digress off of that point right there, right? But let's say I go out and purchase an $80,000 truck and I finance that $80,000 truck. What I've just done is I've just mortgaged my labor for the next however many years I contracted with a bank.
Yeah.
Yep, I mortgage my labor, I mortgage my energy, because it is my energy that I'm going to have to expend for the next several or dozens or 10 years, however many years it is, before I pay that back. So I'm saying, yep, I'm going to go to work for this many years and make sure that I pay you back what I borrow from you today. So when you take a look at the world debt is just shy, if it hasn't already passed over $300 trillion. Well, world GDP, I think, is about 275 trillion. So our world debt is more than what the world makes in a year. So, and when I take a look at the United States of America and take a look at all of our debt, not only our national debt, but our unfunded liabilities, it's an even worse picture. So the way it looks in the US is even worse than what it looks like as a world. So we've borrowed so much from the future that we can never pay it back. And the way in which this system was created, this debt monetary system by which we're governed today, it was created in a way that it can never, ever be paid back. It is mathematically, physically impossible for our debt under this system to ever be able to be paid back. No matter how much everyone works, no matter how much everyone sacrifices, we can never pay this back. And if people understood that our debt can never be paid back, then maybe they would question the value of the actual debt note that we use to exchange value with. And that's the thing, is that's where schools have failed. They have failed to teach our children what real money is.
It's funny. You talk about a lot of things that really, really need to be explained going forward, especially to our children. We've grown, we've been raised ourselves, and we raise our children, unfortunately, in a consumer society, and everybody is in this mode. To spend, to borrow, to spend, for instantaneous gratification.
Yep.
Let me ask you, what do you think is the most important thing right now and in the near term? Do you think being prepared, or do you think paying off your debt to be prepared. You know, there's a fine line today between, you know, being prepared and having more debt because, you know, we keep in this catch-22, we keep this snowball just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And, you know, it's going to become, you know, the problem gets bigger and bigger, but, you know, you have to kind of mitigate which one to take care of first. And, you know, in terms of going forward, do you think that in the near term that being prepared is more important?
Well, that's a great question. Someone actually asked me that question. I believe it was in my last live stream that I had today. And what I say is this: I say that being debt free is a form of preparedness. However, it depends what part of your life you're in. Let's say, for example, that you've never heard about preppers. You don't even know what it is. Let's say you have 3 days worth of food in your house, like the average person does. Let's say that if tomorrow the electricity went out, you don't even know how you're going to be able to get backup power, right? Let's say you have absolutely no preps in your life whatsoever, and you have debt, all right? First of all, one of the best things to do to be prepared if you have debt is to become the most valuable employee for whoever you work for. Make sure that that you cannot be replaced. Be that valuable. Be that guy that comes in first and leaves last. Be the person that's the most innovative, the person that works the hardest. Why? Because if you have debt and you're not prepped, you need a job, all right? Get a side hustle. Your income is your greatest wealth creating mechanism, in my opinion. Your income is your greatest wealth creating mechanism. That's why if you're in debt and you're spending 70% of your income on maintaining your debt, you'll never, ever get out of debt. You'll be in debt for the rest of your life, all right? So make sure that you make yourself the most valuable person where you work and all that stuff, right? Now, should you pay off your debt, or should you become physically prepared by having those things that you need in order to survive a short-term or extended crisis? What I would say to that is this: if it were me, I would continue to service my debt. I would make the minimum payments on everything that I had to make the minimum payments on, and of course, not to get into any further debt. So service your debt, minimum payments, don't get into any further debt, get a side hustle, become the best employee where you work for your boss. You are the last person that your boss will fire. That's how good you have to be. Now, as far as the preparedness side of things, since I'm only servicing my debt and I have absolutely no preps, I would go ahead and take my disposable income every month, and I would start out with a small emergency fund. I like to keep a couple of months of what I need to live on, pay bills, etc., in the bank, and I like to keep a couple of months in cash in the house. So in total, I have about 4 months, about 1/3 of a year worth of cash, half of it in the bank, half of it in the house. Luckily for me, I'm debt free, so it doesn't take me much to have to keep in the bank or the house, because I just have the basic utility bills that, you know, anyone would have. I don't have a mortgage. I have a 18-year-old truck, and then I have a 11-year-old truck. My wife's got an 11-year-old truck. We don't have car payments. So once you do that, then you can go ahead and take whatever disposable income you have and start to work on your preparedness plan. And working on your preparedness plan is very simple. A lot of people get intimidated when they watch a video of me introducing them to my pantry, because my pantry at home, it has a year's worth of food. I can easily feed myself and my family for a full year in a room that I turn into a pantry, and that room is only about 72 square feet. But there's enough food in there to feed my family for a whole year of things that we already eat. Not fancy stuff like you see back here, right? This I consider long-term food storage in the form of like freeze-dried foods. I consider that like a luxury. These are the things that you get into once your regular pantry is full and can feed your family for 6 months to a year, all right? So you start working on that. But what you want to think about, if you're thinking about becoming prepared or better prepared, is this. You take a look at all of the infrastructures around you that you rely on. And a few examples are water. Do you rely on water utility? Do you rely on a company to pump water through the pipes and that when you turn on your tap, that water comes out? If you do, then you may want to consider having a backup to that infrastructure. So create your own miniature infrastructure for all of the infrastructures that you rely on. Another good example is electricity. Can you make your own electricity, or can you store up enough electricity in the case that the power went out? You can at least power your refrigerator, or you can at least power your heater if you have a heater to heat your home for enough time so that the electricity can come back on. Do you have a backup generator, for that, for your refrigerator, your freezer, your heater, whatever? Let's talk about food. Supermarkets, they're an infrastructure within themselves. Do you rely on your food coming from a supermarket? If you do, what would you do if the supermarkets shut down tomorrow and they weren't going to open up again for a month? Will it happen? I don't know, but it could. But you can have a snowstorm that snows you in for 2 weeks. How are you going to get to the supermarket then? Do you have enough food put away of things that you regularly eat so that you can survive for an extended crisis? Do you have a way to cook that food? Do you have a small stove that uses propane or butane that you can at a minimum boil water in so that you can sterilize water should you have to, in case your water infrastructure fails and you find yourself having to go get water from the pond down the street? So you take a look at, and I can get into all the other stuff, gasoline, oil, all these other things, medicine, self-defense. I can get into all of those things, but those are all in themselves separate infrastructures that we all rely on a daily basis, but we take it for granted because they've been there all our lives. And one day, one or two or all of those infrastructures can go down without your notice. So if you're not prepared for something like that, then you will be one of those people that will be very willing to give up your sovereignty and or your free will to an entity that has what you need. I.e., if you have no food put away and something happens where you cannot get any food, you're going to look at your child after day 3 and they're going to say, I'm hungry. What are you going to do? You're going to do whatever the government tells you to do because you don't have any food and your child is hungry and you want to make sure that your child eats. So what I'm saying is that if you want to preserve your freedoms, if you want to preserve your sovereignty and never put your future or your family's future in the hands of someone else, then make sure that you're prepared to survive any crisis, be it a short-term or long-term crisis. And when I say crisis, I don't mean Planet X hitting the Earth. I don't mean the end of the world. I don't prep for the end of the world. I prep for my family. If I knew that a meteor was going to come and hit the Earth next week, I wouldn't be prepping. I'd be partying it up because that would be a life-ending event for everyone in the planet pretty much. So, a lot of people look at preppers and they say, oh, you're just a doomsdayer. No, I don't prep for doomsday. Like I said, I prep for my family. I prep so that they can continue to have the same standard of living that they've been used to living in case something happens where those things that I can easily get now go away and I can't get them anymore. And hopefully you can prep enough to get you from point A to point B. And then once the crisis is over, because no crisis lasts forever, if not, there wouldn't be a word crisis, right? It would just be regular life. If you've prepped enough to get you from point A to point B, when you come out the other side, whatever it may be, you will be stronger and better and ready to, to take on whatever new paradigm comes along. And that's where this is important. That's where preserving your wealth is important, because no crisis lasts forever. And on the other side of whatever crisis it may be, you're still going to need wealth. You're still going to need money to interact with other people, because not everyone has what you need and you don't have what everyone needs. That's why a medium of exchange is very necessary in order for us to be able to have a functional economy, I would say.
Rudy, that what you said is really, really important. And I really enjoy every time you pick up that silver coin, because it's really so important, when you actually call that money. You've obviously been in Alaska for a while now, and prepping has been, I would assume it's kind of in your blood now. We have a lot of people, hopefully, watching us from many different places around the country, and hopefully even at some point in time around the world. Do you have a general formula that you would say in terms of a percentage? Do you say, hey, because you weren't always from Alaska, you were from New York, correct?
Yeah. Yep. I grew up in New York. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, if you're talking to somebody who's from downstate New York, or if you're talking to somebody who's from, Los Angeles, do you have a general formula that you would say, hey, listen, make sure that you have, 1 month's worth of real money, or a month of food or 2 months of food? I mean, in terms of, preparedness, what would you say is like the basic you should really, contemplate having?
Well, that's a good question. And I like to say that we're all different and we're all in different parts of our lives. But you really have to ask yourself that question, because we all have different beliefs. Now, for me personally, I think that at a minimum, we should all have 6 months worth of sustenance at a minimum. Wow. Because look at and all you have to do is study history. Just study history. That's all you have to do. Take a look at Germany. People starved, right? Take a look at the Great Depression here in the United States. People starved. The banks were closed for 6 months in 1907. I think it was 1907. The banks were closed for 6 months. People will starve. And I would say that 6 months minimum is what you should have. Personally, I think at least a year. I would not be comfortable without having at least a year of sustenance. And the thing is that when people hear that, when they hear a year of sustenance, are you serious? A year's worth of food? They think that it's going to take up a warehouse. The average person can store enough sustenance. And what I mean by sustenance is stuff that you already eat. And if you don't eat, I regularly eat rice and beans. All right. I'm from New York and I'm Dominican. All right. So rice and beans is a staple. But pasta, rice, beans, pasta, sugar, flour, salt, some spices, some oils. You can fit enough of that stuff under a queen size bed to feed a family of 4 for a year. Wow. Okay. It doesn't take a lot of room. Now, you don't want to get stuck eating just rice and beans and pasta, and stuff. So of course I tell people that they should store what they eat. And then once they've stored, once I have my pantry full of 1 year's worth of preps of things that we regularly eat, all I do now is just I maintain it. I like to call it filling in the gaps. So if I see that I'm down 6 cans of corn, the next time that we go to the store, if corn is on sale, I'll buy me some corn. If it's not on sale, I won't buy it until it's on sale, because I know I've got a year's supply. So why not wait until it's on sale? So usually whenever I buy stuff now that I'm replacing the things that I have in my pantry already, I usually wait till it's on sale. So I have a great example. I went to the commissary here last week, I think it was, and they had stovetop stuffing on sale, 54 cents a box. I have enough stovetop stuffing for this Thanksgiving, but I was like, wow, 54 cents a box. Guess what? I just got the stovetop stuffing that I need for next Thanksgiving after this one's over, because that stuff will last years on the shelf, years past its best by date, right? So I personally say at least a year. And the reason I say that is because I believe that we are headed into very tough times. I believe that we're already in a food shortage situation. However, the food shortage that we're having now is not a scarcity issue, but in my opinion, an economic issue, meaning that food is becoming so expensive that the average family is not able to eat what they normally eat. They have to buy cheaper stuff and less of it. So right now, the food shortage that I see that we're having is more of an economic issue. I mean, food banks are just overwhelmed. Even schools, are not being able to get enough food to feed their students. But eventually, I believe that the food shortage will become a scarcity issue, meaning that there just won't be enough food than what we're used to having now. I believe that that's going to happen here. I believe that it's going to get, now I'm not a prophet and I didn't have a dream, but I believe, in my opinion, that around 2025 will be the apex. It's going to, like, if you're not really prepped, like if you're not really, if you really don't have your stuff squared away by like 2024, man, you're going to have a tough time of it. Because I think that after 2024 going into 2025, man, we're going to have so many problems in this country and throughout the world, and energy and food is going to be such a big issue that there's going to be a lot of suffering. It's going to become what I like to call a resource problem. It's no longer going to be a monetary problem. It's going to be a problem with actually resourcing the goods that we need. So that's just my opinion. And it's based on the economy. That opinion is based on the economy. It's based on political issues. It's based on geopolitical issues. And it's based on social issues within our country. Yeah. All those things I think are going to culminate around 2024, specifically November 2024. And into 2025, I think it's going to be very bad. I hope that I'm wrong, of course. I'm not the kind of prepper that wants something bad to happen so that I can use my preps. Because I use my preps every day. I rotate them. Yeah. It's what I eat on a daily basis. So it's not that I want something bad to happen. It's just that I see no way out of it. I see that there's no way out of it for our political system. I see that there's no way out of it for our economic system and our financial system. And then you take our social problems that we have in our country and our geopolitical issues that we have with outside borders. It's just a perfect storm. But like I said, I think we still have a couple of years to prepare. People tell me, no, the SHTF is going to happen, in a month or two. I'm like, okay, you can think what you want. That's fine. But I personally feel that you still have some time to prepare, but don't wait. Only because I'm sitting here telling you, hey, I think we still have to like 2024 to prep. Don't wait till 2024. Start now. Yeah. You don't want to buy insurance the day after you get into a car accident, right? No, that's a bad. You want to make sure that you have it before then. So get it now.
I'm just curious about your thought process, because you mentioned earlier that you read something about what was going on in Europe with energy prices, and you alluded to another situation where you kind of saw ahead of time what was going to unfold. How do you come to these? Where are you looking for news?
Well, I mean, I look at news everywhere, except for the mainstream media. Okay. So I look for news in social media. I go to Market Watch. I go to Zero Hedge. I go to, I forget the name of this man. He's an awesome guy. I forget his name. I forgot his name. But I get it from wherever I can get it from that looks to me like it's trustworthy, right? And then I do my research, though. So I read an article. I don't just read them like, okay, yes, all right. No, I go and I search for a whole bunch of different things within that article, make sure that they all jive, that they're all like correlate, right? So I don't just look at one thing. And then I just go ahead and I just do deductive reasoning. So, I mean, look at the UK. They're having issues with energy, right? So what did they do in the UK? They mothballed their coal plants, and now they, not necessarily the UK, but Europe, right? They mothballed their coal plants and were relying on just solar and wind. And what happened earlier this year? They had a snowstorm. All of their solar panels got covered with snow, and all of the wind turbines froze up. They had to restart their coal plants, but they mothballed them, so it took them a long time to restart them, so people suffered, right? So I look at what's happening here. I'm sure you've heard the term Green New Deal, right?
Oh, yeah.
So same thing is happening here. As soon as this new administration took office, what did they do? They shut down the pipeline. So now, instead of being independent with energy, instead of being able to provide ourselves with all the energy that we need, we are now dependent on countries that don't like us to export their energy to us, right? So I'm looking at all of this stuff and I'm like, you know what? That's happening in Europe. That's happening in the UK. This country is starting to look a lot like that, at least politically. Let me go ahead and mitigate what may happen if something goes wrong. And let me go ahead and get me an extra year supply of fuel. Same thing with food.
It's becoming an ever increasing list of things that you have to prepare for. And
yeah, absolutely. I did the same thing. Like, you know how I was talking to you about ribeye 2 years ago being $8.99 a pound? Lee, I've got ribeye that's 2 years old in my freezer that I vacuum sealed that is still good to go. I'm still eating ribeye at $8.99 a pound. Okay, I'm not eating it at 20 bucks a pound. I ain't buying it for 20 bucks a pound. In a year, when I run out of ribeye that I paid $8.99 a pound for, if it's still $20 a pound and I really, really, really want some, I'll get some, but I don't have to have it.
yeah,
So I'm still eating today at yesterday's prices. And that's one of the great things about being prepared, is that you can save a lot of money by buying things at today's prices and eating it a year from now at today's prices, when you know that a year from now your labor will have had been degraded even more so than what it is right now.
I want to thank you for joining us, Rudy. And I also want to thank everyone for joining us here on Risk. We look forward to seeing you again soon.
All right. Thank you very much, Lee. And thank you, James. I had a great time as always. And, you know, every time that I would do one of these interviews, I know that it was a good, I hate calling it interview, but, you know, collaboration. I know that it was a good time because I look at the time and I'm like, holy smokes, the time's already gone. So thank you for having me. Had a great time. And whenever you want to do it again and you want to hear me yap on for an hour, let me know.
Oh, we'll definitely have you back. Take care.
Take care.